So I am driving through Georgia. I think I'm almost to Atlanta for Dragoncon. This is, I think, my 4th year in a row going to Dragoncon, and specifically robot battles. This time was a bit of a cluster getting things ready for this event because most of my focus has been prepping for AVC. Because right now it is Friday, August 31st, and in less than a week I will be in Colorado for AVC. So it has been a lot of focus building Hellhound, my new 12-pounder, and honestly that is probably about 97% done right now, but still not entirely finished. It should be a pretty quick finish once I get home, I hope. But building robots for Dragoncon kind of got put on the back burner. My initial plan was to bring Demon Spawn, and then that would be it, and then I'd bring a new 1-pounder and the new 12-pounder to AVC. I decided it was probably maybe a smarter move to bring Demon Spawn to AVC, so I kind of slapped together a new version of F1/3. I ended up putting the brushless drive that Demon Spawn sometimes uses into a 1-pound robot. So it's the same basic shape, actually a lot of the same crappily cut and beat up Lexan pieces from F1/3, same machete thing on the back, but just with way overpowered motors. I drove it a little bit last night. It's gonna be ridiculous. It has very little control to it. It kind of just will spin its tires and kind of go off on tangents, and it brings that knife down with a lot of force now because it's also running at a higher voltage than I ever ran Demon Spawn at. It's running at 4 cells instead of 3. So, I mean, I'm not really expecting it to do very well. It's just going to be fun just to be stupid with it. And then I was kind of just, packing stuff up the other day, and I realized that F-13 was sitting on my shelf, and I realized that everything in it was working. I hadn't taken any parts out of it since firefights, and everything on it was still completely functional. So I decided to throw that in with my stuff, and I'm bringing that as well. I did go out and buy a new pool noodle to stick off the back of it like I did last year. It's sadly only duct taped to the what remains of the machete mount on the back, so it's probably going to come off really fast. Once again, this robot doesn't even have a wedge or anything. I don't even have the arms like I did last year, so it's very little chance that's going to do much of anything. That's completely fine with me. It's really just to be stupid and have a good time. That's what I like about Dragoncon. I feel like I don't have to worry about the robot being super serious. Other people do build things that are just kind of goofy and fun, and I'm completely fine, especially with AVC right around the corner, just doing stuff to be dumb. So, Tooth Whack bots for Dragoncon, and yeah, tonight is the BattleBots viewing party, which I'm very excited about. There's not nearly as much BattleBot stuff planned for this year from what I saw, but I'll take what I can get. So round 1, F1/3 was up against a robot called Green Reaper 7.0, a vertical spinner, and I managed to get right across the arena and smack into him and wedge him around a couple of times, but it became very apparent very quickly that I did not have very good control over this robot, and within a few seconds, one side of drive completely gave out on me, and I was left to crab walk around the arena. This is a major problem because this robot has brushless drive and is pretty uncontrollable when both wheels are working, and with just one wheel it would kind of spin uncontrollably and thwack its machete around and do a whole lot of nothing. It seems like Green Reaper was having some issues as well. I think its weapon died pretty early on, and there was a significant portion of the match where we just couldn't seem to even make contact with one another. I believe at one point F1/3 actually lost signal or lost control somehow. It just kind of died in the middle of the floor, but it quickly came back to life and continued kind of flailing around nonsensically for most of the rest of the match. I eventually crowd walked my way over towards the pit area, and because I could not control this robot at all, spun myself right out of the arena, ending the match. And since it's single elimination, ending my 1-pound run. Alright, so the aftermath of the one fight I got with F1/3, because unfortunately Robot Battles is single elimination. Well, it looks a lot worse than it actually is here. What you're seeing here is a result of a very hasty teardown, and I did basically take the wheels off to use for Demon Spawn the next week at AVC. But the robot itself is pretty much fine, with the exception of this motor here. So I think my pinion came loose off of the brushless motor on this side, which is why I lost drive. I can feel it now. It's kind of hit or miss. I think right now it's free spinning. Let's see if I pull that back. Yep, I'm spinning the output and the motor itself isn't spinning. This side spins just fine. If I remember correctly, I only used that flux acid on one side of the robot, so it does kind of make sense that maybe it was this side that didn't get it, and that's why it failed. Something I didn't think of until after. So unfortunately, F1/3 lost that fight. I think even if I'd been able to last a full minute to go to the judges, I might have been able to win, but it was such an uncontrollable robot. That amount of speed in a robot this small is just impractical in any way, shape, or form, and I still need to correct the Simon K software I have on these speed controllers. I think it's biased slightly in one direction, which really becomes a factor when you're trying to go forwards, because they're biased basically now opposite ways, so it will try to turn and go the wrong way when you're trying to go forward, and you have to try to compensate on the stick for it. This is an issue that Demon Spawn had as well, but I thought it was actually a drag issue with Demon Spawn. I thought it was something physical in the robot causing that problem. But doing it this way and knowing that everything is, very basic in terms of the components on this robot, I realized that it definitely is a factor of one motor activating forward before the other one. One just has a slight lag, and I think a slight percentage down on its throttle compared to the opposite motor, so it just will never drive straight without you trying to correct for it. I can't really say much else. I didn't really expect much more from a robot built in a day, or rebuilt in a day. It is what it is. So the next day were the big robots, and F13's first fight was up against a robot called 1 Minute Bot, which was a lifting wedge up against a thwack bot with no wedge. And round one, this is done in rounds, basically best 2 out of 3, sumo pushing off the platform. I went out, I spun in circles like an idiot, and then I drove myself off the platform. Since it was all self-inflicted, I realized if I hadn't been spinning around like crazy and hitting him with the end of the pool noodle, it actually wouldn't have counted, because there's a rule that you have to actually make contact before it counts. But unfortunately, I did that, and it counted against me. Round 2 started off, and he was able to get under me, push me around. I was being a lot more conservative on the stick this time, and actually was able to kind of get around him, maneuver a little bit. Then we got back to the same corner I had driven off previously. He's about to push me off the edge of the platform, and I get off to the side just enough where he accidentally drives off himself, putting us at 1-1 going into the sudden death round 3. Round 3 kicks off, and I'm able to get right to the side of 1 Minute Bot and start pushing him off the platform, but then I get my payback for the previous round, and he moves off to the side just at the last minute, and I go tumbling off the edge of the stage, giving me a loss and eliminating F13 from the tournament bracket. Next up was the 12-pounders loser rumble, which had Overhaul in the center of the arena as an arena hazard for some reason, with a tribble on its head. It's Dragoncon. I just stopped asking questions after a while. But there were 7 active robots and a Roomba on the stage at once. I kind of got my revenge against T-Boner, and he tried to knock me off the stage, ended up knocking himself off. A bunch of robots knocked themselves out. The cat litter scooper was pushing a lot of robots off at once. I went after that bot because I really wanted a chance to fight it. It seemed like we couldn't push each other around very much. We were pretty evenly matched. So it was really just 3 of us at the end. I forget the other robot's name, but it was a very low wedge/dustpan design. But eventually the cat pushes me off the stage and himself with it, leaving the wedge as the winner. And F13's final fight of the day was the 12-pounder Grand Rumble. This was all 12-pounders who wanted to participate. could enter, as opposed to the previous Rumble that was all people lost round 1. I think there was something like 13 active robots plus a Roomba and Overhaul in there, and this was just really chaotic off the get-go. I had an issue where F-13 stopped moving for a second at the beginning, and it just led me open to be pushed off the stage. So I was just able to sit back and watch the carnage, and carnage is definitely what we got. It was so many robots at once, all piling up against each other, and the one that was really the one to watch out for was Dale Hetherington's T-Boner. It has that really awesome kinetic flipper that I got to experience firsthand last year, and with the arena edges so crowded with builders driving their bots, it kind of became an arena hazard for the drivers as robots started flying off the stage as he flipped them. But it was really entertaining to watch. Most of the other robots were kind of giving up as the fight went on, really just leaving T-Boner to pick them off. A lot of robots got kind of high-centered, either on the floor or Overhaul or both. At one point, I got a Roomba launched at me, which was kind of terrifying. But Dale just methodically went and picked off every last bot there on the stage top. It was a hell of a lot of fun to watch, and he very deservedly won that Rumble. Do you even see me here behind the pool noodle? F-13, there we go. Okay. He really didn't take any damage during his fights. Actually, the worst of the damage you see here is from return shipping, or bringing it home and leaving it in the tub for so long. The pool noodle is so far from being straight, it's not even funny. But, yeah, another robot I didn't really have high hopes for because it's a Thwack bot in an event that is a pushing match, but it didn't take any damage. There's nothing really there that can implement too much damage. Last year I did face that saw spinner thing that did a little damage to the front, but I mean that was mostly cosmetic, and this time I didn't even encounter something like that. I did experience a power failure or signal failure, I'm not sure which, in the final Rumble. I saw it a couple times when I was testing, but it seemed to go away almost instantaneously. It was almost barely noticeable, but the robot would just have like an instant where it wouldn't respond. I don't remember, looking back at the footage, I can't really tell if I lost control completely at the end of that Rumble or if it came back and I just was in a situation where I couldn't get out of it, but that's the only thing, I guess, that's a problem with F-13 right now. I don't anticipate keeping F-13 too much longer. Its chassis is trashed beyond the point of being able to compete locally with events with spinners. So robot battles would be really the only thing it could do. And it's not really super competitive at robot battles. It's funny. I like that. Especially this time I used a full-length pool noodle on it. It was just stupid. But it doesn't really have much it can do anymore to be competitive. And then I have Hellhound now for full combat events. And I want to use some of these internal parts for other robots, so it may be coming apart. This may have been the last hurrah for F-13, but we'll see if that remains true. The plus side of bringing F-13 and F-1/3 is they sit perfectly on top of one another for this end shot here. But that is a wrap up on Robot Battles 66. This was held over September 2nd and 3rd as part of Dragoncon 2018. In Atlanta, Georgia. I don't know if I said that much when I filmed at the beginning of the event report, so I might as well throw that in right here. Not a super successful event for me, but a lot of fun. Dragoncon itself was great. I'm going to throw in some clips here at the end of one of the panels that was there. There's a BattleBots viewing party on Friday night, and there was a panel about how to get on BattleBots. I think that was Saturday evening, and I want to say it was Saturday as well that Mark Satrakian, the builder of Mechadon and the Snake and the Master, the guy who made the little claw hand with the giant nut for the 2 ABC seasons of BattleBots. He did a presentation talking about his career in special effects, and it was phenomenal. That room was packed, standing room only. It was one of the smaller rooms, and I'm hoping they'll bring him back and give him more space and have a bigger audience, because it was a fantastic panel. The BattleBots ones were good too, don't get me wrong, but that's one of those builders I've kind of always looked up to and admired, and just to hear him talk about his work, both in robot stuff and in special effects, which I'm a huge movie buff, so it was just fantastic to hear him talk about his career. Dragoncon, always a great time. The robots this year, I will say, are amazing. The 1 and 3 pound robots tend to kind of be a little more of your standard fare because it is full combat, so people usually are coming with robots playing to win. There were some really unique robots. I can't remember the builder's name, but somebody actually had a spring flipper. I think it was a beetle. Really, really cool robot. Can't wait to see that robot kind of progress and come back and hopefully be better and badder than ever, because that was a really neat concept. The one bot, Jameson had half of it, where it was 2 1.5 pound robots that were designed independently with a minimal set of rules, then stuck together at the event. That was really cool. But the real gems of the robots were on the second day at the full 12 and 30 pound battles. If you go to Dragoncon, I know it's Monday morning. You have to wake up after like the hangover of all hangovers and get down there and also get out in a time enough to leave and be home or whatever. But definitely make a point of going to the big battles, even if you're not competing. Some of the designs are so outlandish and crazy that it's awesome. It's amazing. Somebody had a cat in a litter box with a litter scooper in the front as a lifting wedge. One of my favorite robots I've seen in a long time. Somebody had a fully functioning model crane on top of a robot. I don't know why, but it was there. It was awesome. Somebody had a kid's wheelchair kind of ride-on toy with a Raggedy Ann and an inflatable baseball bat, because specifically the rules have stated for years that you can't put a 4-year-old on top of your robot with a baseball bat and let them beat the other robot to pieces. So somebody did the closest allowable replication of that rule, and that was freaking amazing. There were a lot of other robots that were just cool or unique, or I can't even describe it. I love that so many people come literally to play, not to win, but to just do something cool. And some people build some very cool things that win. Dale's robot T-Boner, of course, being a beautifully engineered machine. Tusken Raider, another one of my favorites for the last 2 years. So there are, very, very polished, very, sleek robots there. But then there's just goofy, stupid stuff that is amazing. And I was hoping F-13 would be kind of funny with its giant pool noodle, but I think if I want to go in with the stupid robot category, I've got to step it up next year and come up with something even dumber, or at least make like a giant version of Gorgor, because something has to happen that's a little more crazy than this, but still, in the spirit of what's going on. So yeah, not a great event for my robots, but a fantastic event just in general. Can't recommend Robot Battles highly enough. I absolutely love it. It's one of the highlights of the year for me in robot combat. So I will stop rambling on here. As I mentioned earlier, there'll be a little extra footage from one of the BattleBot panels here at the end, with some footage of some damage on some of the bigger robots that competed on BattleBots. And then I will be back very, very soon with my event report for ABC. So I'll see you guys then.
We chose the weapon, and separately we decided okay, who will hit us, how will they hit us, and what would be the best solution for however we are hit. And we tried to kind of go through that. And yeah, the 3.5 spares, that's the same thing for Valkyrie at least. And yeah, you just kind of you work on this for so much, and when you first start the project, it might be destroyed. So it's not a hobby thing where you're just I want this to stay beautiful and pretty forever. You know that it's gonna get chunks out of it. It's gonna get ripped apart. Going back to the Tombstone comment, that all of us feel is just there is definitely gonna be a trauma that happens if you have to face it, and then you get to watch your hard work and dollars get ripped apart. I don't know. Other opinions?
Yeah. So this season was a little bit different for us than the previous ones in that we knew up front we were guaranteed to have 3 or 4 fights, whereas before it was a single limb tournament, so if you lose one, you're out. And so the preparation is very different. You need to, in those other ones, you don't have much to prepare ahead of time, but in this one I found myself the night before going, well, I've got all my tools in my shop and my spare parts here. Why am I going to sleep when I can just make more spares? And so I just started chopping metal and running machines and all that stuff the whole night. And I just didn't sleep that whole night, and then we just threw it all in the car and went, because whatever you can make ahead of time is really going to help you.
So in the case of Bombshell, we took a couple of approaches. We had about a spare for every individual part on the robot, And then we looked at the robot as a whole and figured out what areas we thought were most likely to get damaged. Basically, as you get to the closer and closer to the center of your robot, you're less likely to need to repair that at the event, because if someone's hitting the middle of your robot, you're already dead. And you're probably not going to be able to fix that anytime soon. So we had some spare frame rails. We had, I think, 3 or 4 spare wedges. And you can see what Paul did to us in one fight over there, where it took this 1/4-inch steel plate and just bent it completely.
Thanks,
out of whack.
Paul.
So what you do specifically on your robot is going to be down to looking at things like, where do I think it's going to get hit? Is the person driving it good enough to keep someone from hitting where we don't want it to be hit? And then you design your spares plane around that.
Sure, so you can build all the spare parts you want, but something that we, Hypershock, and I think everyone finds out, is once you get it to the arena, things don't go as planned necessarily. So you can test this bot as much as you want up against control conditions, but you can't test it up against other bots. And so once you start fighting another robot, you see, oh crap, we didn't develop this specific part good enough. You can have all the spares in the world, but at a certain point, you're going to have to say, well, how do we work around this design flaw that we built into the bot? And how do we try and make that more effective as you go on? So it's really an engineering process that goes on even after the competition is in full swing.
The answer is stop building a new robot every year.
Yes.
Well, pretty though.
But you mean you don't have a Tombstone clone in your garage? I thought everyone had one of those.
I was gonna say, mentally, I expect that the robot will get destroyed, and everything you see externally is disposable in my mind. So all the expensive components are inside. That's what I try to keep and use year to year after year. Whereas everything you see that's like steel on the outside, it's cheaper, it's easier to actually replace or repair, and I don't care about it as much. So going in, it's not like it's some art project that I've worked on for years that's like my baby that's protected. Instead, it's the expensive bits that I've already raised money for are trying to be protected. Everything outside might get destroyed, who cares? So if it happens to last more than an event, that would be, you designed something really well, that's amazing. But I don't assume that. I assume it'll just get destroyed, you'll make it better, and reuse the expensive bits.
And to prepare for this tournament, especially since we're going to at least have 3 or 4 matches each, many of the teams actually prepared multiple copies of all these outer components like Paul just mentioned. So spare frames, maybe at least 2 spare frames. We had 3 saw blazes. Paul had 2 bike forces-ish. Yeah, some of them.
Don't tell anyone.
2 Broncos, there's a lot of spare robots, and then spare parts, like the front plows that we let Endgame chew on a lot. We have 4 of those. So, not a big deal. So we'll just throw that one out.